And now, from Seven Blue Skies channel, here is the finale to Paranormal, Book 3, Legend of the Loch Ness Monster, by Dr. Ahmed Khalid Tawfiq. 10. Failure is not an option. On the table, Ewan Fraser placed a paper scroll he had brought. Using the lit tip of his cigarette, he pointed out the red dots scattered here and there. There it is, a whole network just a few kilometers from the sea mines. One touch of the detonator is enough to scatter this beast's parts all over. And he chuckled, saying, "This is going to be fun." In a panic, Sir James exclaimed, "Just a second here, you fiend. We don't want to just kill the beast, we want to kill it and preserve the body intact for scientific research." Fraser chewed at his cigarette, seeming disappointed. He reconsidered. That's true. Plus, the explosion would also blow up the woman." Just like that, this rude beast calls my delicate love, Maggie, the woman? He really doesn't have an ounce of decency. Anyway, he's not too smart. He scratched his head and said, "Well, I can't find a solution for killing the beast without tearing it apart. You tell me it's 12 meters long?" "Yes, that's what they say." "That's big," said Ewan, and after hesitating for a moment, Actually there is another solution, which is to lure him closer and then aim powerful cartridges like those used in hunting rhinos between his eyes and in his mouth." "But," Sir James remarked, "that plan would be dependent on our reaction the moment he comes out of the water, and the accuracy of your aim. Plus, he will surely thrash around and go berserk, and we won't be safe from a hit by his tail, if he has a tail, which would sweep Maggie into the water or injure her badly." With real anger, I protested, "You're still talking as if Maggie will accept standing as a victim in front of this beast? I refuse, and I strongly forbid this." Ewan gave me and Sir James a look clearly meaning, "What's wrong with this idiot?" As for Sir James, he looked at me firmly and said, "Dr. Ismail, Maggie's acceptance or refusal is none of your business. She's the only one to make the decision. She knows we need her to play her role, and she knows we won't let any evil touch her. So don't play the kind lover role for my sake, as her father. In other words, you're not the only one in this world who loves her." Trying to ease the tension, Maggie said, "Rifat, please. I accept this and actually welcome it." With eyes tearing up, especially since Sir James had never spoken to me so angrily before, I exclaimed, "Why not just give him that girl Erica? Isn't she a Scandinavian, the type the beast prefers?" Maggie spoke up. "That poor girl can't stand any more cruel experiments like that. As for me, I can and will." Looking at Maggie confidently and cunningly, Ewan said, "Plus, the beast can't tell the difference between a Scandinavian girl and a Scottish girl. All girls look alike." What a pig. And so began the cruelest days of my life. Ewan was staying with us practically day and night, his stinky breath following me and his rude remarks piercing my brain, those words with which he flirted with Maggie, or fancied he was doing so anyway. Sir James welcoming him, and Maggie smiling, and me raging. Maggie has changed a lot. I no longer see myself in her eyes. And with true panic, I realized I had started to lose her. But that's my fault. My love for her was like a placid, peaceful, and predictable river. Nothing new or surprising about it. I lost her the day she became certain she would never lose me. As for Ewan, he is imagination personified. He is the tumultuous, mad sea, and she will never know if he likes her or not. And he won't stop belittling her and causing her worry. My boring love, my eternal loyalty, my never-ending amazement with her are the reasons which caused her to escape me like water running through my fingers. And women always want a lover who is amazed by them, who finds them breathtaking. But they still want to follow behind that rude type, a bastard who doesn't care about them. Let this be a lesson to me in my future stories, if there are any. Ewan Fraser came to the manor carrying a large scroll, and despite Graham the butler's disgusted gaze, He placed it on the dining room table to show us the wonders it contained. 2 big bottles filled with some kind of liquid stood nearby. On each of their bases, something which resembled a spear was welded. "Now, my latest conclusion," said Ewan as he started explaining his idea. "These bottles are filled with concentrated phosphoric acid and can be mounted easily onto the muzzle of a harpoon gun. When the beast appears and opens his mouth, Rifat and I will shoot these bottles at his mouth. They'll explode inside him immediately, causing bad burns which may kill him instantly without causing the body much damage." "So it may not kill him," I remarked with coldness and doubt. "Then," he replied sarcastically, "it will at least kill his enthusiasm, and he'll dive deep until we can free the woman and think of another idea." Sir James seemed keen on the idea, and Maggie also approved. As for me, my opinion was that this madman's suggestion would result in a massacre. Nessie would not die before turning the whole lake inside out and destroying Sacrifice Rock, and Maggie on it, and devouring all of us, and... "Listen, bro," Ewan demanded. "Either come up with a better idea, or shut up." So I shut up. And with the promised day nearing, I started crafting that ominous bronze pendant which my love, well, ex-love, would wear while offering herself to the Loch Ness monster. And with Ewan, I started training for shooting the specialized depth rifles, practicing loading and discharging our guns with those bottles of acid. He taught me how to load and fire the gun and then retreat and reload while he fires his own, so that the rain of fiery bottles would be continuous. The more the burns injured the beast, the more he would open his mouth, making it easier to aim. We would have just 4 bottles each, so must really take care of them. And actually, Fraser wasn't so bad. He really taught me a lot. Plus, he hadn't asked Sir James for a single penny for all his efforts. His love for destruction was pure, without any monetary gains. The idea of killing this beast caused him to forget any materialistic greed in this crust of our shallow lives. And the day came. And finally came the scene with which I started this story. The 4 of us in a small boat in the middle of the lake, heading towards the ominous Sacrifice Rock. The fog covered the surface of the lake, making visibility nearly impossible, which made aiming very difficult. Silently, Maggie fastened the necklace with the pendant around her neck and removed the pins from her hair, letting it down onto her shoulders. Sir James ensured we still agreed to continue, except for me, of course, and then helped Maggie onto the rock containing scores of scattered bones, the hand bones of virgin girls who went before, some 8 centuries ago. Ewan Fraser tied her with a slip knot to the wooden pole, ensuring that with one simple move she could free her hands and escape whenever necessary. And we left her standing there alone, my dear, brave girl. We returned to the boat and took Sir James back to the rocky beach next to Urquhart Castle, and Ewan and I returned to our position near the rock, hiding in the boat, our eyes on Maggie's ghost standing there in the midst of the fog. Sir James would blow in the horn on the stroke of midnight. In silence, we prepped our rifles and lined the bottom of the boat with the bottles. Ewan was tense, but hid it well with his mask of arrogance. As for me, I was certain my heart would jump out of my mouth if I dared open it. Thus, I kept silent. The fog was heavy and cold, like a nightmare. Nearby, an unknown ominous bird wheeled continuously above the rock, and the boat rocked gently. Lighting a cigarette, Ewan reached into his bag and took out a flashlight and a car battery and connected them with 2 wires. The flashlight lit up, giving off a bleak yellow light which succeeded in dispelling the fog around the rock so we would see Maggie standing there, squinting her eyes against the light. Our location in the water was about 20 meters from the rock. "A phosphoric lamp. You don't forget anything," I said, surprised and pleased. Tensely, after taking just one drag from it, Ewan tossed his cigarette into the water and replied, "Of course, this kind of fog ruins 90% of planned expeditions like this." "Well, what's important now," I said, "is that the beast not get skittish. It's not used to all these theatrical effects at the dinner table." Without thinking, Ewan lit another cigarette, commenting, "I don't think so, and I don't think he'll even notice the light." and he looked at his watch and whispered tensely, 3 minutes to go. As the bird still circled above the rock, Ewan's eyes followed it and shone in the circle of light. And then the bird would leave the light, becoming just a shadow flapping in the dark sky. The boat rocked gently. Cigarette smoke, and my heartbeat, and my dry throat. Ewan's fist gripped his rifle, and now I could imagine Sir James standing in the dark near Urquhart Castle, lifting the ivory horn to his mouth and blowing. Damn this silence. The silence you can almost hear echoing in your ears. Silence like a perceived heavy entity, and... The surface of the water parted, and my grip on the rifle tightened. Something huge and black rose from the lake, water dripping from it. The waves rose, revealing that thing. The head and the neck, and the eyes. The cigarette falling from his mouth, Ewan whispered, "My God!" A legendary creature sprung from the natural history books. A Viking legend lifting its head above the surface of the lake and moving steadily towards the rock. The neck was long and snake-like, and in the head 2 fiery eyes. Then the horse's mane which some witnesses described, though Mrs. Gold was not convinced. The beast had not yet entered the circle of light, but I was shaken, terrified by the sight of its heinous face, that face which the northern invaders knew well. I raised my gun, but Fraser's shaky hand grabbed my arm, and for the first time I saw the fear in his mean eyes as he whispered, "Don't shoot! Our plan has gone wrong." "What?" "My calculations were wrong," he said in undertones. "Nothing will work with this thing except torpedoes, so don't arouse its anger. It's a failed attempt. But the effect of our projectiles will only do what a cup of hot tea will do to your tongue. The beast will get mad, and all the gates of hell will open on us and the woman." He then started rowing slowly and carefully towards the rock as the beast advanced at the same speed and steadiness from the other side. Throwing me a knife he took from his belt, Fraser whispered, "Try to free the girl. I'll watch your back from here. Bring her back and we'll go back to the beach as quickly as possible. This thing is heavy and slow-moving, at least I hope." Carrying my rifle, I jumped onto the rock, onto the stage set for tragedy. I regarded the horrific scene the victim would witness. What terror and panic the bound girl would feel seeing this legendary beast moving towards her. But the creature was still not near. I ran over to Maggie and started cutting the ropes as she looked on silently. As if hypnotized, her eyes were fixed on the beast edging forward, its head above the water, silently towards her. Her, my dear Maggie. We won't try again. We had conceded our failure. "Maggie, I'm—" And here, before I knew what was happening, a dark shadow jumped me from one of the large crevices in the rock. It collided with me, trying to pull the knife from my hand while swearing at me in an unknown language. I took a defensive stance instinctively and directed a strong hit to his head with the butt of my rifle, and then a frenzied kick below the belt. But this bastard was strong, quickly regaining his balance and directing a kick stronger than mine to my stomach. My ears whistled, and my breath abandoned me. But luckily, I didn't have the luxury of fainting. Grabbing the knife from my hand, the man shouted, "You sons of... You're ruining everything!" And here the light fell onto his face, and I saw his yellow mustache and long hair. I knew right away who he was. Alfred Halthorpe. Alfred, who had hidden this whole time here on the rock, waiting to see what we would do. At the critical moment he had announced his presence in the most vicious way. And, even worse, he had managed to take the knife from me. I looked at his rabid face and his white, wolf-like teeth, and I realized I would never defeat him. But where's Fraser? "You're going to bring on Odine's wrath, you fools! Don't you dare prevent the beast from the sacrifice, you British dog!" The beast was near the rock now. There was no time to lose. But Maggie was completely frozen and could not aid me as this fanatic waved the knife in my face. It seemed to me that he knew well how to use this weapon and would use it efficiently. I had no choice. "And now, son, I have no time. You asked for it," I shouted as I pulled the trigger on the rifle. The burning bottle of acid flew towards him from a distance not exceeding 4 meters. The bottle exploded on his face and body, some of the blowback falling onto me. I heard him scream like someone suffering in the depths of hell, and I saw him thrashing about in pain and smelled the scent of burnt flesh. Luckily, I couldn't see his face as he was outside the circle of light. He thrashed about, screaming and cursing me in an unknown language, and then jumped up and threw himself into the water. He swam towards the beach, blind and unawares. Just then, the beast stretched its long neck and brought its head down to water level. It opened its mouth full of huge fangs. The water roiled and became red as I saw hands trying to push away the giant jaws and heard a terrified scream. And then, nothing. The huge head rose again. This beast seemed like a living nightmare. And then this nightmare dove into the water slowly and efficiently, leaving a huge whirlpool in its wake, loads of bubbles escaping to the surface of the water. Something else moved upon the surface, and then silence. I left Maggie and ran back to the boat. Fraser's absence during these events meant only one thing. And there, I found him stretched out in the bottom of the boat, his head bleeding. That madman had hit him in the head with something, but he was still alive. Alfred had swum from the rock to the boat and attacked Fraser with an oar from behind. Then he climbed back onto the rock, trying to prevent me. Resting on my arm, Fraser whispered, "The beast?" It took its final sacrifice and left. And I looked at the lake, its calm surface belying the secrets it held. The Loch Ness monster deserved its life and freedom, and no creature would be able to take those away from him after us. The ending. "And so the story ends," said Sir James, "without proving the beast's existence to the world, let alone its body. All our efforts gone to waste." And then he looked at me blamingly, saying, "If you hadn't thrown the necklace and the horn into the sea, we could have made another attempt, one in which we would be more prepared. But, to be honest, I'm not as angry with you as I'm trying to appear." Having slept well and recovered, Maggie said, "The problem is that Rifat came to my room last night and forced me to—" "To what?" Sir James demanded quickly. "To burn all my notes on the horn's frequencies and wavelengths so I couldn't make another one. He even tore up the drawing of the pendant." Sir James shook his head sadly and stood up, preparing to travel to Edinburgh, promising to take me with him. And while checking my appearance in the mirror in the sitting room, I told Maggie, "This way, the beast will always be Scotland's national treasure. People will always wonder what it is exactly, and will be satisfied with a blurry photo. It will get used to eating fish again and forget all about this nonsense, until, after centuries, someone finds the horn and blows in it." Maggie regarded me with that steady gaze I had always feared and whispered, "Forever?" "Huh?" "You promised me you would stay with me forever. So why are you leaving?" "Have you forgotten about you and Fraser?" She looked at me, surprised, and then started laughing, asking, "You're jealous of you and Fraser? I hadn't realized. I didn't know you had such low self-esteem. Leave these delusions behind, Rifat. If I were to fall in love with everyone who tells an amusing story, I would still be a foolish girl. I mean, he's very interesting, but he's also a big clown, and a butcher. You think I'm foolish enough not to realize that?" And she reached over and flicked my chin playfully, saying, "I'm not a teenager anymore, Rifat. I'm almost 40, and a woman in her 40s understands what love is." "But I started. "A woman loves a man not because he's the strongest of men or the most handsome or very rich, but because it's him. Do you understand? Because it's him, with his weaknesses and strength, with his skinniness and asthma and blocked arteries. Because it's him. And love is not a show of force, but rather continuous exchange of energy. How could I so easily forget all we've been through?" I went on sulking. Her logic was intelligent and undeniable, but still I was not comforted until she said, "You're not devoid of tricks and talents. After all, you saved me, and even saved you and Fraser." You cut the ropes off of me, like Tarzan does for Jane at the end of the movies. And you fought for me." Continuing her words, I said sadly, "And I killed." "You didn't kill him," she replied. "He threw himself in front of the beast. Plus, he left you no choice. And that's the difference between you and Fraser, who would have been proudly telling the story of burning Alfred with the acid if he were in your shoes." Though quite proud of myself, I was shaken by emotion, my tears threatening to fall. But I got a grip on myself and told her again that I must go, because my roots are in Egypt, my work, my family and home, and my grave. Bringing her face close to mine, she whispered sadly, "Forever?" "Hmm? You'll remember me forever?" "And until the stars burn out, and until—" But here she pointed at something behind me and shouted, "Rifat! That suit of armor of Archibald McKillop just moved, I swear. There's a ghost in this hallway." We had finished with Brother Nessie only to have this Archibald McKillop appear and ruin our lives. In disappointment, I stepped away from her and started prepping my luggage, saying, "I'll come back someday and address that topic. But try to keep that ghost in good shape for me." "Okay," she murmured. "I promise." And after about a week, I returned to my home in Douai, Cairo, with new memories taking their place in the museum of my memories and on the top shelf of my experiences. I thought my problems had ended, but, as usual, I was wrong. Another nightmare awaited me in my own building, on the same floor where I lived. But that's another story. Signed, Dr. Rifat Ismail. End of Part 4, and end of the story. Okay, guys, you might notice that Rifat is referring here to The Legend of the Cannibal, which is Book 4. You can find that in our playlist. For those interested in Greek mythology, you'll find Rifat jumping in on a Greek horror adventure in the upcoming book, Legend of Medusa's Head, coming very soon, so subscribe, like, comment, and wait for us very soon. Cheers.